Hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi Christian's book reviews, brought to you by the Sci-Fi I'm Ben DeBono, as always, here to talk to you today about Dan Simmons' masterpiece, Ilium. This is part of his 2-volume set, Ilium and Olympus. I have read these before. In fact, I have both of them autographed. I had a chance to meet Dan Simmons when he came to Minnesota for the Olympus release. And I love these novels. The third time I've read Ilium, it'll be the second time I'm listening to both of them on audiobooks. So second time I've read Olympus, and they're absolute masterpieces, in my opinion, not to give away the review or anything like that. Obviously, it's going to be 5 stars. I'm a huge fan. In fact, I'd say Ilium and The Terror kind of alternate for me between what's my favorite Dan Simmons book, and Hyperion's right there too, but I put both of those just slightly above it. I think they're absolutely brilliant. And we're going to get into why. Why am I such a big fan of this novel? Stop using superlatives, Ben, and tell us what it's about. Okay, well, I'm going to do exactly that. So Ilium, if you're not familiar with it, it's a little bit of a wild plot. So buckle your seatbelts and let's go. I'm not going to give away any spoilers. We're not going to get into spoilers in this. In fact, what I'm hoping to do is kind of talk about the setup and then more talk about the ideas and themes and philosophy that's going on in this novel. Because to me, for as good as the plot is, and it is very good, that's the stuff that makes this novel great. That's what makes it worth reading and possibly even studying. I think it's that important. So there's 3 different plots. The central plot takes place with a guy named Thomas Hockenberry. And Thomas Hockenberry is a 20th, 21st century Homeric scholar. He's an expert on the Iliad. Except he's not in the 20th or 21st century. He has been resurrected 3,000 years later and is now in a sort of alternate history where the Trojan War is going on. The gods on Olympus, who may or may not actually be the Greek pantheon, have resurrected him and have given him and other Homeric scholars, who they've also resurrected, orders that they are to report on the Trojan War. Specifically, how is it developing in comparison with Homer's works, especially the Iliad, and the other literature surrounding the Trojan War that we have in today's world. So obviously that's quite bizarre. So we pick up with Thomas Hockenberry, actually much the same as the Iliad picks up, 9 years into the Trojan War, and specifically right as Agamemnon and Achilles are having their little spat that starts out the rage of Achilles that Homer sings about for us in the Iliad. Okay, that's plot line number 1. Plot line number 2 takes place on Earth, again 3,000-ish years in the future, and the humans that we meet essentially they're human, they're not post-human. The post-humans are another group in this novel, but they're a group of people who live exactly 100 years, and then after 100 years they transcend into the stars to live with the post-humans, or so they believe. They are weighted on hand and foot by robots called the servitors, and they are defended by other robots named the Voynix. They know nothing about these robots or where they come from, but they don't really care. They are an illiterate, or more specifically a post-literate society. They have no studies, no work or anything. They are essentially living in a utopia of sorts where they are weighted on hand and foot. There's no violence, at least not human-to-human violence, any accidents or violence in terms of being wounded by an animal or something. They are able to be instantly repaired, or by instantly, like within a day or so. Even if the wound in question happens to be fatal, their bodies are able to be rebuilt and they live out their full 100 years. There's no racism, there's no religion, there's no nothing Okay? These people are living what many people, not necessarily me, but many people would consider to be utopia. And then finally, the third storyline takes place with a group of humanoid robots called Moraveks, who they're kind of half organic, half robotic, and they've noticed that there's some weird quantum activity taking place on Mars. Again, this is 3,000 years in the future, which may or may not have to do with the gods of Olympus that Thomas Hockenberry is interacting with. And they send out a group of Moraveks to investigate. We follow two of these Moraveks, Mormont and oh man, I'm going to blank on his name. Mormont and Orphew. Mormont is an expert on Shakespeare's sonnets, and Orphew is an expert on Proust's, oh, I'm forgetting the name of Proust's big work, Cross Space and Time or something like that. I know that's not it, but it's something along those lines. And the two of them, who again, they're robots, debate the virtues of Shakespeare and Proust as they travel to Mars and analyze what they have to say about the human condition. So that's your setup. Brilliant, brilliant plot. And that's about all I'm going to say about the plot. Maybe I'll talk about it a little more. But I really, the other thing I should mention, just plot-wise, is that on the Earth with the utopian humans, the post-literate humans, is that there's one person named Harmon who has now learned to read. He has taught himself to read, and he is upsetting the status quo. So that's what the plot is there. So, what's going on in this novel then, besides this crazy plot, which, if there's nothing else going on, it's worth reading just for that. If you're at all a sci-fi fan and that doesn't grab your attention, I don't know what will. Okay, there's a couple things going on in this novel. First of all, if you've ever read a Dan Simmons novel, you know that he puts a lot of thought and a lot of research into this stuff, and Ilium is no exception. In fact, it's one of the most foremost examples of that. So part of what's going on here is literary criticism. We see the developing Trojan War, even as it sometimes diverges from Homer and sometimes not, even though we're not quite sure who the gods are. We see the Trojan War through the eyes of this Homeric scholar. And it becomes a brilliant commentary on Simmons' part about the Iliad. And he manages to get into things like linguistics. There's a part where, if you've ever read the Iliad, so if you haven't read the Iliad, here's essentially what the plot is. Achilles gets pissed off at Agamemnon because they have a fight over a woman. Achilles takes his ball and goes home. Not all the way home back to Greece, but he essentially says, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to fight with the Greeks anymore. I'm done helping Agamemnon. I'm not going to help with the siege of Troy anymore. As a result, the Greeks start to get their butts kicked big time, and the Trojans are just running all over them. So there comes a point in the poem where Odysseus and a couple other people go to appeal to Achilles. Agamemnon sends them with kind of peace offering, and as this scene comes up in the book, it's such a perfect example of what Simmons does so well, of being able to pull in intellectual and literary criticism while not sacrificing the plot, because we're on pins and needles because of what's going on in the plot right now, which I won't describe when we get to that point, but the stuff that's going on is going to make a big difference in Hockenberry's life and in the fates of the Trojans and all this stuff that's going on. All these characters were invested in. But we start to realize that for Hockenberry to pull off what he wants to pull off at that point, it really depends on how we understand the Homeric text at that point. He's basing his plan based off of a grammatical construction within Homer, and so Dan Simmons is able to completely analyze the Homeric text in a way that we never for 1 second as the audience feel bored, because we are completely invested in the plot, and this grammatical construction in Homer that we're analyzing matters so much for the plot. It's absolutely brilliant, and there's stuff all the way throughout that. one of my other favorite examples is in the Iliad. One of the famous passages that I think bugs a lot of people, or at least first-time readers, is the catalog of ships. So in Book 2 of the Iliad, there's like this long pause in the story where Homer goes through, and Achilles is from here, and he brought blah, blah, blah many ships, and Odysseus is from here, and he brought blah, blah, blah many ships, and he just goes through all the ranks, and he goes through all the Trojans. And Simmons echoes that scene, but he does it at the end of the novel where things have developed to a point where it works in the flow of the novel. And it's such a brilliant commentary on that scene, because I think that the modern reader hits it at the beginning of the Iliad and their eyes glaze over because it feels irrelevant. But by putting the parallel scene in Ilium at the end of the novel, Simmons is able to show us why this scene matters in the Iliad, because our eyes don't glaze over when we hit that scene in Ilium, because we're invested in these characters now. And what Simmons is trying to say is, look, just because you're not familiar with the characters doesn't mean this scene is irrelevant in the Iliad. The original audience would have known who these people were, and they're now hearing the lineup of all the people who are going to be in this poem. You know, it's kind of like you're watching the Super Bowl and the starting lineups are announced or something like that. It's just awesome stuff. And then, like I said, there's Proust and Shakespeare stuff going on. There's stuff on the Odyssey, there's stuff on the Tempest. The amount of literary analysis that's going on in this novel, it is extraordinary. You will leave this novel even smarter, much smarter than when you began. Dan Simmons is a genius, and his genius is at the forefront in this novel. But he's also a genius philosophically. So here's the other big thing that's going on in this novel, is the question of what makes us human. What does it mean to be human? And this plays out in a couple different ways. So take the second and third storylines I mentioned, the Utopia storyline and then the Moraveks, you know, the two who are quoting Shakespeare and Proust. These storylines are separate for at least a lot of the novel. I'm not going to tell you whether or not they intersect, but they at least begin separate and they develop separately. And what we come to realize is that the humans living in the Utopia are not human in any recognizable sense. They don't have death in their culture. They don't have ambition. They don't work for anything. They don't have families in a traditional sense, or even a non-traditional sense. Nobody knows who their father is. They can't read. And Simmons lays all this out for us, and what we slowly begin to realize is that these people have sacrificed their humanity at the altar of Utopia. And then we contrast that to Mormont and Orpheus, who are these robots discussing the meaning of humanity in Shakespeare's sonnets and the meaning of Proust's search for what it means to be truly human. And it's such a brilliant parallel philosophically, because what Simmons is trying to say is that, look, these non-humans are more human than the actual humans. And it's a stunning and moving portrayal that develops throughout the novel, especially as we see the humans in the Utopia, through various plot points I won't describe, begin to recover their humanity. There's a point where a certain literary character whose identity I will keep quiet shows up among the humans in the Utopia place, and he begins to train them, especially to train the men, and to teach them how to be men and how to be human. And one of the things he tells them is that nobody in the society, like I said, knows their father. And he says, you need to know your father. You need to know who your parents are. If you don't know your mother and your father, you don't know yourself. And he gives this speech on why these elements are important to be human. And then the whole sense of reading comes into it, which plays into the literary aspects of, to sacrifice that ability to read is to, in some sense, sacrifice our humanity. And then the other parallel we develop is to realize that there's a paradox at the center of this, that the humans living in the Utopia are less human than the barbarians in the Greek and Trojan ranks who are raping and pillaging their way through the Trojan War. And Simmons is interested in making us really feel that paradox. So he doesn't pull any punches. So it's not that, oh, here's Odysseus, here's Achilles, here's Hector, and we're going to elevate them and say this is what humanity really looks like. No, we see the brutality, the violence, the pointlessness of this stupid war they're a part of, the horrible treatment of women, abusive, sexually and physically. And we see that, but yet they are more human than the people who are living in the non-violent, peaceful utopia. And that's a tension that Simmons forces in our face and makes us wrestle with, and he won't let us take any easy way out. And that is so brilliant. It's fascinating to me because I just quit reading a book by Arthur C. Clarke. I got about a little less than halfway through it. I think it's Songs of a Distant Earth or Songs of a Dying Earth or something like that. And I just finished Ilium when I started it. And Clarke is depicting very much a utopian environment. And I realized that his utopia looked so much, not entirely, especially not with the post-literacy, but it looked so much like what Dan Simmons was portraying here in Ilium. Except Clarke is holding this up as kind of like, let's develop in this way, humans. Let's aim for this. And it honestly it really got to me because I started to just hate the book because of that, because he's holding up these characters, Arthur C. Clarke is, as an example for us, and they are fundamentally not human. That I realized, and part of why I put the novel down, because it was just really disgusting me that what this guy is advocating for in this book, and frankly a lot of his books, is for the development of humanity to go to a point where we would philosophically no longer be human. And again, there's that tension there, that in a lot of ways Arthur C. Clarke's societies, his futuristic societies anyway, are wonderful places to live in. There's no violence, there's no war, there's no poverty, there's no humans either, though. And so that's the philosophical tension in Ilium, is what does it mean to be human? And are the sacrifices that we would need to make to get to that utopian place worth it? And I think the answer Dan Simmons comes up with is no. They're fundamentally not worth it. But that doesn't mean we want to go back to, a 10-year war because some guy's wife ran off with another man, which is the whole point of the Trojan War. But it does mean that they have something we don't. And it's a really important book for our society and for people living in the postmodern West, because we're right in the middle of that. In so many ways giving away our humanity in the name of convenience, in the name of sometimes really good ideals. But yet we're giving something away that when we lose it, we might not ever get it back. And that's what Dan Simmons wants us to wrestle with, and it's important we wrestle with it. I mean, post-literacy, you don't think that's coming in today's world? I mean, look at how few people read anymore. Look at how few people take the time to just sit down and enjoy a book. Not a comic book, and I'm not disparaging that media, that medium, and I'm not disparaging movies either. I'm just saying, though, that when we embrace those media almost exclusively, which so many people aren't we fundamentally giving away a part of our humanity, something our ancestors strove for, the quest for mass literacy? I think we are. And you see it in all sorts of areas, but those are the two that I find very prevalent for the audience of the Sci-Fi Christian, is that we, in so many ways, are sacrificing our humanity little by little by little. We don't even realize it. So It's time to read a book, and the book you should be reading is Ilium. 5 stars. I can't say enough good things about this book. Do yourself a favor, read it, enjoy the story, but wrestle with the ideas and let them penetrate you and let them really get inside your head, so you really have to wrestle with them and think about them. That's what good literature should do, and that's what this book does, and that's why I think it's a masterpiece. Alright guys, I'm out of here then. Great book, like I said, 5 stars, love it, please read it. And I am Dan Simmons from the Sci-Fi Christian, and I will talk to you later. Goodbye.